Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific North, fresh from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
It's back to the sweet, sweet Mariners, baby, because it's their off season. There's no time to feel sad for them anymore. So sweet, sweet Mariners it is.
I guess what they do say is distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
Let the pain wash away.
Hey, I'm just excited Houston got knocked out.
I think everybody was except for Houston. Yeah, even
Yeah.
Alex Bregman was happy. He's like, thanks, Houston. It's been real. All right, but we're not talking about them today. We are going to talk about just go super in depth on just a phenomenally played NFL game that happened yesterday. But before we break that just winner of a game down, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that is going to be coming in about as prepared as the Seahawks offense and defense was on Sunday, well, guess what? You're in for a treat
Got him.
because you will not get the regular breakdown that you get. You will get less stuff, less prepared because, hey, I'm trying to stay on brand. And if you're looking for a guy that will stay on brand, that's me, your boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. And if you're looking for a guy that might be optimistic, he might be pessimistic, he might be realistic. Which istic is he? He could be autistic. We don't know. We're gonna find out in this episode. It's
Oof.
Cain.
Yeah, I'm Kate. You can find me over on Twitter at Kane2406. Over on TikTok, Kane0634. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it. Yeah, dude. What a shit show of a game that was.
He didn't I promise the listeners that they'd find out if you're autistic or not. Are you?
No, I'm
Okay.
not.
Mystery solved.
I'm not. I think you know, being my brother for just dang near 30 years, you would know. But no,
Had
I'm not.
had questions.
All right,
All
sure.
right, let's get into the game. The Seahawks lose to the New York Giants at
And there,
home. And I think that you could describe this game in terms of the product that you saw on the field coming off their first loss under Mike McDonald. You've got a home game against a Giants team that has not been playing particularly well so far to start this year.
no,
You've got the
but
dreaded 10 or 3 games in 10 games in 10 days schedule with the Monday nighter Sunday followed by a Thursday. And that Thursday night game is your division rival, the team that's been atop of the division for the last handful of years, coming into town on a short week. This is the definition of a trap game. And the score ended up showing that it was 29-20. It wasn't actually this close. There were a lot of fluky type stuff. The defense didn't play very well. The offense did not look like the Seahawks offense we
it
saw
couldn't get
on Monday.
going. It couldn't get going at all from what it seemed. It just kind of seemed that every drive stalled out. DK Metcalf was Carlton Davis' daddy. The
Fumbled again.
fumbled again. Uh, put over 100 yards. Basically, the guy glued on him the entire game on the Monday nighter, and could not shake Deontay Banks all night. So all afternoon, Kenneth Walker couldn't get anything going. JSN seemed finally get
Well,
something going late.
well, he did, but then he also had a clutch drop late. You had Tyler Lockett that was doing Tyler Lockett things. There was the play where there was defensive pass and interference called where it kind of knocked him off his route where he had room to run, but was kind of stumbling due to the contact. So I mean, the running game was non-existent. The best run of the day was a Geno Smith scramble, which JSN sold that like
Sold.
crazy on a deep ball. But there's a lot of questions, and McDonald after the game basically said we need to start running the damn ball some more, and especially against a team like the
It,
Giants
it
who
is tough
have
with that defensive line.
they have a strong pass rush.
Right. But you have Dexter Lawrence in the middle, who is an absolute menace. And then
But
you have the edges with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns, dude.
yeah,
That's
but Brian
still pretty
Burns and Kayvon
nasty.
Thibodeau are not known as plus run defenders. Like you stay out of the middle a little bit, you could scheme some stuff up. But there was legitimately 5 touches for Kenneth Walker in the run
Mhm.
game. I think
No,
you had
they couldn't get any
I
holes in
think
when
you
they
had
did try
two
to run the game.
touches. I think you had 2 touches for Charbonneau.
Right. And
Oh,
we, you know,
sorry. My apologies. No, I was right. 5 for Kenneth Walker and 2 for Charbonneau.
yeah, it's kind of crazy that, and then you go to the defensive side of the ball. Daniel Jones kind of sliced and diced our defense as he pleased. The running backs did whatever they wanted. And also, Daniel Jones' broken QB scrambles seemed to work out for him this week. So, wasn't great defensively. Saw some good things out of Jerome Baker coming back.
Saw
Not
some
a
good
whole
things
lot.
out of
I
Jaron Reed.
I would have loved to also keep the hot hand with Tyrese Knight kind of going. I get Jerome Baker signed on a 1 year deal, but Tyrese Knight has also been playing at a higher proficiency for this team, as you've seen in the last 2 weeks. Um, but Jaron Reed also had, I felt, a monstrous game. He was breaking through that offensive line like it was nothing. It seemed like he was pressuring the quarterback almost every other play. Big Cat didn't do a whole lot. Derek Hall kind of got stuffed, and Uchenna Nwosu didn't look dazzling in his debut.
Well, and he's injury at the thigh. It sounds like he's going to be out for a little bit. The other crazy thing is, you even felt better about this game than we did during our recording on Tuesday because you found out that Neighbors was not going to be available, that Devin Singletary was not going to be available. So you had a rookie running back in there. You had Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, and Wandale Robinson. And Robinson's done some stuff, but Slayton goes for over 100 yards and a tutty. And the Seahawks kind of lucked into some things throughout this game.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was the second drive of the game. Giants march down. They're at the goal line. Running back tries to extend, hits a body, isn't knocked out by a Seahawk, falls right to Rayshon Jenkins, who goes untouched for a 101-yard fumble recovery. So helps you out there. You have a late score with JSN where they really went up tempo, which you kind of would have hoped they would have went there a little bit earlier, but the game was still close, so they weren't going high tempo. But we really got to talk about it because at the end of the game, they're attempting a game tying field goal, and Isaiah Simmons jumps the line, blocks the kick, and they run it back for a touchdown. And a lot of people have been talking about it since yesterday online. Yes, Isaiah Simmons did not impact anyone on the line, but the
Somebody
center
else did.
the center is not allowed to be contacted in that while snapping, and you had the opposite side defensive tackle basically holding down Stoll to open up
Yes.
that lane. And a lot of it's on Laken Tomlinson. If Laken Tomlinson stays straight up instead of falling directly to the ground, then Isaiah Simmons cannot jump the line and get back there. But the thing that I want to say, the Seahawks were lucky enough to be
Yes.
attempting that. They were outplayed in every facet of the game for the entirety of the game. So
Yes.
that shows you the talent and the resiliency that this team has. Geno Smith was sacked 7 times. You do you want to know a good way to stop a pass rush? A good run game. Actually, I did not write out my stuff, but Kenneth Walker had 5 carries for 19 yards. That's an average of 3.8. Zach Charbonnet had 2 carries for 11 yards. That's a total of 5.5. When you add it all together, they averaged over 4 yards a carry. So it's
Yep.
not like it was ineffective.
Right. They just didn't do it. And that kind of falls onto the head of Ryan Grubb. Yes, we know what this passing attack can do, right? We've seen it in multiple facets in this offense the last couple of weeks. But you got to stay true. Kenneth Walker is a top back in the league, in my opinion, and he's a difference maker, right? We talked about this last week against the Lions, where he's getting bouncing off of Farrell Brown, running to the opposite side of the line for a touchdown, making one necessary juke after a block, and he's gone for 40 yards. You got to do something. Your longest run of the day was by your quarterback, who's not known as a runner for the most part. And
he had 74 yards rushing.
Right. So you kind of got to
Sorry,
figure something out.
72.
You gotta figure it out coming in against kind of hobbled 49ers team coming up.
Well, before we get into that, the one I'll touch on your Grubb thing, which is you looked at the Huskies last year, and they were a team that were predicated on the pass. You had Michael Penix that finished second in the Heisman voting. You had a trio of wide receivers that all were drafted in the top 3 rounds. But they did have a good running back, Dylan Johnson, right? And you saw that in the USC game where when stuff starts rolling, they'll turn to it. Well, this looked like the reverse of like an old school Pete Carroll game where you looked at that playoff series again, that game against the Cowboys, where the Seahawks decided to pound their head against the wall for 3 quarters and do nothing in the run game, and then said, "All right, Russ, try to win the game here." This is the opposite. It was, "All right, Gino, try and keep us in this," and then they didn't even flip it over to the run game because at that point in time they couldn't. You were out of time. You needed to make up points, and
Yeah.
so I do think that Grubb will figure it out. It's odd that he's not running as much balance. Yes, I could see, a 70-30 split pass to rushing attack, right? I think that this week there'll be an emphasis on the run game, especially going in division, right? When McDonald was in division in the North, what do? Run the ball, because everyone in that division runs the ball. And it can help really establish that powerful presence going forward. When you look at Bradford and Haynes at the right guard position and Lake and Tomlinson at the left guard position, they profile better as run blockers than they do pass blockers. So build that confidence back up. You had some brimming confidence, I think, from the offensive line after the Lions game. And I think that it put a little bit of hubris on this team that were able to shut down Aiden Hutchinson from getting to the quarterback. Well, they weren't able to do that this week, right? They
were getting it from every angle.
And a lot of times there's nothing Gino could have done.
No, I mean, a lot of those times it was Dexter Lawrence right through the middle. And I mean, the dude is young and he is just a havoc right there at the nose tackle position. And this dude was just getting pressures like crazy left and right. And I saw Brian Burns kind of got held in check, but it was mostly Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau.
Well, Burns got a couple of sacks.
It was just kind of a nightmare game. It was an old Seahawk game where you're just like, Russ is getting sacked a billion times. Hold on to your seats.
Yeah, Dexter Lawrence had 3 sacks.
He's crazy, dude. He's crazy.
Wild. 2 for DJ Davidson. A 1 for Brian Burns. Sorry. Only a half a sack for Thibodeau. But one of the crazier stats that they brought up during the broadcast, but they didn't finish it, is going into this game, the Giants were last in the league with receptions by tight ends, where they had a total of 5. Their tight end had 5 in this game, and a lot of clutch ones. And it seemed when the Seahawks were getting pressure on Jones, he was able to elude most of the time. Or there were other times where he was kind of throwing the ball away to the tight end that was staying in his a blocker, because the one big play where Jones is getting ready to get a big sack, that was not a screen setup, which ended up being a screen to the tight end. But with all that pressure, it was able to work. So a lot of things are going to need to be cleaned up. The one positive that I see going into this game is, historically, Mike McDonald led defenses have done very well against Shanahan tree offenses. And you've got one of the Shanahans that's going to be calling this game. This is going to be a battle, and it's prime time. It's Thursday night. This one's at home. So you expect the fans who are very frustrated from this game are going to be bringing the noise, bringing the passion, going into a Thursday nighter against a team that has got the best of you a lot more recently than they have in the past, right? The last 5 meetings have been losses by the Seahawks. So you're
Yep.
looking to turn that tide come Thursday night.
Right. And you need to, right? Before you go on a skid. You need to get back in the win column and potentially stay in first place in the division and still continue to make a statement. Um, it is going to be a tough game, but they are going into this. I believe Kittle is questionable once again. Fred Warner is questionable, which he is kind of their biggest difference maker on defense. Uh,
Hafunga at safety's been out. You've got Christian McCaffrey, who I do not think is going to be off the IR and ready to
but
go.
you know, Mason has been a very sustainable back for
Debo's
this year.
healthy. Ayuk's back in the
Ayuk
fold.
exploded last week. The one thing I need to see from this team is the defense needs to bottle it up a little bit more. Uh, I'm really kind of don't want to see them play a cushion zone like they were playing all game. Uh, I would like to see Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon more on in man coverage, press tightly. I know that Reek was questionable at one point in the game, and
He left to the
hopefully
locker room. I don't know his status for this week
you kind
as
of
we sit
hope
here today.
that he's designated to return. You hope you get Boye Mafe back. You hope to see Byron Murphy back. They need their big playmakers to come back this week, and I need Leonard Williams to make an impact.
Yeah, I think that Williams, Mafe being back on the field this week, it sounded like he was close to being able to go, but they couldn't pull the trigger. And then with Derek Hall, I think that's good. You look at this defense, Trey Brown was probably one of his
Worst
worst
games.
performances that
Mm-hmm.
he's had in the league. And he's going to be a vital piece. And if Reek is going to be out this week, I would much prefer the Seahawks to scheme it up where you put Witherspoon outside at corner, not run him in the slot, and let either Kobe Bryant or Kayvon Wallace really step into that nickel role,
Mm-hmm.
that nickel corner role, or maybe you run a little bit of 3 true linebackers and throw Knight out there in a combo with Baker. I think that moving Spoon to the outside, because although he is that Swiss Army knife for this team, you're not seeing as much impact early on this year like you saw last year. And
Mm-hmm.
the hope that we all thought was Spoon could kind of play that Kyle Hamilton role that was played for the Ravens. So I think that if you move Spoon outside, yes, that does limit his ability to be in as many plays. But I think that it diversifies what you can do defensively by rotating in Knight, by rotating in Wallace, by rotating in Kobe Bryant. And it puts a little pressure off of Nehemiah Pritchett, who's
Mm-hmm.
really just trying to find his footing.
And I think he's playing well for the role that he's kind of been in.
He
It's
had
not been,
7 defensive snaps before this. He was special team.
yeah. So I think that there's a lot of rawness in Pritchett, and I think you could turn it into something special at some point. But
I would like to have more veterans on the field unless you have a young guy that's out there
this
just
is like
absolutely balling.
this could be a game where if Artie Burns is on your practice squad, you may elevate him because hey, Artie Burns has played pretty dang well for the Seahawks in the last 2 years he's been with this team when he's got the starting chance.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game for sure. And Brock Purdy and Geno Smith, even though Geno had a lackluster performance, they're both towards the top of the league in yards thrown this year. So I expect this to be a battle, right? And I think that I think that you really see the special teams ratchet up for the Seahawks because everyone's calling for all these jobs. Everyone's negative after 2 games. Those same people, although it was against lesser competition, right? And I would say that the Giants were lesser competition. You just threw a stinker of a game out there.
Yeah, and
It's
the
time to
Giants have
time to
played
show up.
average the last couple of weeks. I mean, they put it to the fort or they put it to the Cowboys the week prior. Only lost by 5, right? So that's a team that they've been dominated by in years past. The last couple of weeks, the Giants and Malik Neighbors have been just kind of a well-oiled machine, and coming into this off of a good Thursday night before, it just was a tough performance, and they need to bounce back, especially against the 49ers. This is going to be the true testament of Coach Mack. First division game on the year, and it's a big one.
Yeah, and this last week's Thursday nighter between the Falcons and the Bucks was the best Thursday night game of the year, and I'd really like to
Awesome.
see that passion and kind of get back to the old school Harbaugh and Carroll days where it was just a knockdown, drag them out. It's a battle, and I think that's what this can be if both sides play to their potential. If
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking not just offense and defense, I'm talking about Seahawks as a whole and Niners as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, the Niners are banged up. Kittle's going to try anything possible to play in this game because then you do have that little extra rest that comes after this, right? So you'd expect to see Boye Mafe and Derek Hall bookending for this team. Jaron Reed has looked good in the absence of Byron Murphy.
Yes.
Big Cat did not do a whole lot in this game, but I expect some bigger things. Dotson looked a little bit shakier. The tackling and limiting of yak yards was not great in this game. And that's what you need to do against the Niners. You have to rally to the football. You have to gang tackle because the 49ers have guys that all they do is get yak. When you
Yep.
look at Kittle and Debo, those are 2 yak monsters. And then you
And
throw Ayuk can do it too, but he's the guy that can burn you downfield a little bit
right,
more
and you're
consistently.
coming off of a Debo where he just put up a stinker against the Cardinals, and so he's looking to bounce back against the Hawks. And this is a game where he's most likely going to see a lot of slot usage, and whoever your slot guy is really has to be stellar this week.
There was some good news from this weekend. It was that the 49ers lost. So the Seahawks are still at the top of the division at
Yes.
3-2. You've got the Cardinals and the Niners at 2-3, and you've got the Rams at 1-4. So this is the time to really extend that lead, build that up so you can hopefully make a good play for the division as a whole when you get into that tougher stretch. These are games that you learn a lot about yourself and what this team is going to be. And McDonald seems like the coach that is going to hold people accountable for the mistakes that they've made. And I think that it's that way with the coaching staff too. He's said it after the game yesterday and today. Guess what? We're going to see a dose of K9 this week. If he
Yeah.
gets any less than 15 touches, I will be shocked.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a game where they might lean on Sharp a little more too to get that bruiser up the middle. I would expect it. I would love to see him get 10 touches on the weekend comparative to a K9 15 plus, right? Depending on the run game goes. but you're also going to probably see a big game out of the likes of DK Metcalf this week. He has very big beef with the 49ers coming on a yearly basis. And I think the sleeper is going to be JSN this week. He
Okay.
continues to throw some shockers for
All right.
us. So
So since I think we can both agree that offensively, I don't think there was anyone that could qualify for player of the game. I think defensively, there really wasn't anyone that did enough to really be considered as defensive player of the game. So I want two answers for each side of the ball. First answer is, who do you think is going to be the surprise offensive player of the game, and who needs to be the offensive player of the game for them to win this game?
So I'm going to start out with who needs to be, right? And that's Geno Smith. Um, was not a pretty game for him this week after the stellar performance he put up against Detroit. I think you see him bounce back and try to do those short little passes, try to run the ball a little bit, get that passing game open more. Geno has to be the MVP of this offense. Who the shock will be would be JSN, right? We haven't seen that explosive game from him yet this year. And I
Week
think,
two.
right, but, with the likes of DK going off 3 weeks in a row and Tyler Lockett still being kind of that number two receiver type, I think a big game for JSN here against division opponent like last year uh, would go a long way. And I think that would be something great to see for this offense, to see JSN kind of explode against the Niners. Coach Red, who is your shocking offensive player this week, and who is your needs to be
My
offensive
shocking
player?
guy is someone that we don't talk about a lot. So I think that's why it's going to be a little bit of a shock. But if you have a banged up Fred Warner, you don't have a Funga at the safety position, I would love to see a big week out of Noah Fant.
He
I
kind
think
of
that
needs it.
I think this is a week that you could feast a little bit and throw that wrinkle in there, because if you can continually attack the middle with your tight end, what that does is it puts a little bit of hesitation in those linebackers and safeties on biting on the run. If you can sell some screens, if you can sell a block, leak out into that hook curl zone, I think that that could do wonders for your run game. I think the person that needs to really shine for this team to come out with a victory, it's five people. It's the whole offensive line.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Don't give up a sack this week.
I'm okay if they give up 3 sacks, right?
It's
Just
not
as long as
seven.
they're not in inopportune times. But I want to see 100 yards rushing by running backs, not including Geno Smith. And I think that if you can get over 100 yards on the ground from your running backs, and then pepper in 250 to 300 yards and keep Geno upright most of the game, I think that's the recipe to win against the Niners. Is you're going to have to be more balanced, right?
Right.
Even though you had their loss last week against the
Arizona.
Cardinals, yeah, you had a big run scramble by Kyler Murray to kick off the game, but they were leaning heavy on James Conner as that game went on, and James Conner was starting to bust up in that line. I think that you can do that with the combo of Sharps and K9, but the offensive line has to be working better as a unit, has to be working in more tandem, and has to go out there, because that defense, although they are banged up, they still have very good players. So I think that that's my key to the offensive side of the ball.
Okay.
Same question for defense. Kane, who's going to be your shocking guy, and who's the guy that needs to step up for them to win the game?
I think the shocking guy this week will be uh Trey Brown. I do think it'll be Trey Brown. Little
Good
bounce
pick.
back
I was
game.
thinking about picking him because he needs to.
He needs to. He has to, right? He's played very, very well. last couple of years. And the progression has been very real with him. You need him to step up in this game. It is a must win game, right? You don't want to lose 3 in a row. You want to stay at the top of the division, and this is the team to make that statement against. Um, who needs to be? I'm going to go your route. The defensive line. They need to be. They need to be in Purdy's face all game, especially if you have Boye Mafe back this week to have pressure from both sides, and hopefully Byron's back this week as well to get him that first little bit of rivalry game against him. But I think that with Jaron Reed filling in, if you can have Big Cat, Jaron Reed, Boye Mafe, and Derek Hall get pressure on Brock Purdy, it's a lot better of a game than not. So I think that the whole defensive line needs to be the defensive whole gem this week. Coach Red, same questions to you.
My surprise is I'm split, so I'm gonna say the linebackers. I'm mainly singling out Dotson and Baker in this because if you look back to the last real victory, there was a nice Bobby Wagner pick six, right? At just the most opportune time in this game. And I think that we've seen them both perform above average at times and below average at times at defending the pass. If one of them can jump a route and get an interception, I think that would be a huge turning point to this game,
Yes.
especially when you look at the Niners that love to run a lot of crossers. If you're running zone in the middle of the field and he's trying to hit one of those crossers, hopefully losing sight of one of those linebackers can result in a big play for the
Yes.
Seahawks. I think that I'm also going to take your route a little bit, but I'm not going to say the defensive line as a whole. I'm going to say your edge players are the guys that need to step up. You need Boye Mafe on the field. You need Draymond Jones to keep continuing to be effective in the game. And same
Yes.
thing with Derek Hall, because one, you need him to get after Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy, although he can check it around, he's not the most fleet of foot. He can get a few yards, but he's not like a Daniel Jones that can really harm you as much in the scramble game.
Yes.
Where I really need them to button up is when I've seen a lot from Mason is he's not very effective between the tackles. He's more of a guy that likes to gets to the edge. He'll power through a linebacker every now and again, but it seems like when he's running, you know, between guard and tackle and interior of that, that's not where he's most effective. So having those guys set the edge, don't let him get to that next level. In Mason specifically, I need them to play a complete game. Like you, and that's the big calling card of Boye Mafe, right? He can go get after the passer, but he can also be stout against run. It was the big plus of a Chinny Nwosu. You're seeing it a little bit more with Derek Hall, but Draymond Jones is a guy that was a true defensive end. So he is stout against the run. You need him to be very stout this week. And
Yes.
I wouldn't even mind getting creative on some obvious passing downs or drawdowns on moving him back down to the interior at times to cause a little havoc. And he's dropped some weight, get a little flashy and splashy, make some plays.
Yeah. So that's gonna be a very interesting week, especially this like horrible stretch of the calendar. So
Yeah, get hopefully come out of this game on Thursday with a victory
mhm.
and get the little extra rest, get some more of these guys back, be able to address the team. The good news is that you're playing this game at home, and this will be Mike McDonald's first primetime home game. So be interested to see how this
Yep.
team comes out after a little bit of a heartbreaker and then a stinker. So
Yep.
really trying to push forward to really show what this team is made of early in the season.
Yep. I agree.
And that's going to do it for this episode. So why don't you, before you log off or turn your phone off or turn down your little YouTube stream, why don't you just go over and give us a follow on social media? You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, on X at The Real Coach Red, on Instagram at The Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at The Real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or dose. Cain, where you at?
You can find me over on Twitter at K2406, TikTok K0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow. Do it, freaking do it.
As always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.